Hello friends, welcome to Political Science and International Relations. In this lecture, we are going to study an important concept in international relations. This is the Mandala Theory. Mandala Theory. This term may look very different for you. It may look new to you. But Mandala Theory is a concept. It is a very important concept under ancient Indian political philosophy. This Mandala theory was put forward by ancient Indian political philosopher Kautilya, who is also popularly referred to as Chanakya. He is a contemporary of ancient Greek political philosophers Plato and Aristotle. What Plato and Aristotle are for West, Kautilya and Manu are for the Indian political philosophy. Most of us tend to undermine Indian political philosophy. The Mandala theory put forward by Kautilya gives us many insights about how a king should conduct international relations and formulate his foreign policy. Kautilya was an important figure in Indian political philosophy, as already mentioned. Kautilya was a teacher, he was a geostrategist, he was a political philosopher, and he was also an economist. Kautilya's Mandala theory was not a new theory, it was already put forward by Manu earlier. There are references in the Rig Veda, but it was Kautilya who first put forward Mandala theory as a specific theory to conduct international relations and craft the foreign policy. So it was Kautilya who gave a concrete shape to the Mandala theory. Okay, now how do we see Kautilya as far as political science is concerned? Under what approach or ideology will you place Kautilya within? When it comes to international relations, Kautilya is a realist. You can compare Kautilya with Machiavelli. Machiavelli was also a realist. Machiavelli considered the father of modern political science. Machiavelli was a realist. So was Kautilya. Who is a realist? A realist is a scholar who holds the view that any state will always try to maximize its self-interest. The state maximizes its self-interest and tries to achieve the self-interest through power. So, according to realists, the two important aspects from any state's perspective are self-interest and power. The realists see states as distinct units in the international system. The international system itself is seen as a form of anarchy. Anarchy means absence of any centralized power. In such a situation, each state will try to maximize its interest. How it will try to maximize? By using the power. Kautilya also wants the king is the ruler of the state, to maximize his power so that he can achieve his interest. He tells that the king who rules the state should possess power. He should also possess resources. Power refers to strength, ability, domination. You will be able to dominate, you will be strong only if you have resources. So you have power, you have resources. With this, Kautilya tells the king or the ruler to expand. You have to expand. Territorial aggrandizement is encouraged by Kautilya. Today you see states like China and Russia expanding themselves. You also see other states expanding either directly or indirectly. Now, What do you understand? You understand that they follow the realist tradition. You are able to see Machiavellianism in them. You are able to see the philosophy of Kautilya in the action of these states. Machiavelli, the modern father of political science, tells that the ruler need not be moral. In order to protect the state, the ruler can also behave immoral in certain circumstances. Machiavelli will tell. According to him, immoral or moral, this action is decided upon the circumstances. Your enemy decides who you are. So the ruler should always protect the interest of the state. So this tradition is common to both Kautilya as well as Machiavelli. In fact, many Indian scholars in international relations are criticized for not developing Indian traditional political theory. So they are encouraged to use India's indigenous political theories like the Mandala theory put forward by Kautilya. Okay, now Kautilya, he is telling that the king should follow certain guidelines. He should possess certain characteristics. The important principles are that the king should try to expand, right? So he should be expansionist. Secondly, the king should always try to go for peace. War may be an option, but the king should always try to go for peace. This is what Kautilya is telling. Kautilya also tells that the king should be prudent or smart. Your actions should be based on logic. You should be wise. And the king should try to eliminate the enemies and develop allies. Who is ally? Ally is a friend. Ally is somebody with whom you work for common goals and interests and to tackle common challenge. That person is called ally. So these are the important aspects which is seen in a king by Kautilya. Now coming to Mandala theory. Mandala means circle, right? So he puts forward a geometric explanation of geopolitics through mandala. Now the king is placing himself in a mandala or a circle. This is how Kautilya sees it. He sees the international system as made up of circles. Now where do you find the king or the ruler? The king himself is placed in a particular point within a circle based on the relative position of the king. The other states are positioned. The other states could be friends of this king or they could be enemies of the king, but their positions are studied and analyzed with respect to the position of the king here. Now who is the king? The king is seen as a conqueror. Kautilya calls the conqueror king as Vijigishu. Vijigishu is the conqueror king. Okay, if you assume India as a state, hypothetically, in the mandala system, then the ruler of the Indian state will be a conqueror. He is seen as the king, the Vijigishu, by Kautilya. Now this is the first circle. This circle is very important. Okay, the circle in which the conqueror king is placed. In other words, we can say the circle in which the king of the home state is placed. Now, within this circle itself, Kautilya mentions the friends of the kings within the primary circle. But for our study, we need not go into other kings within the circle. We will consider the primary king within the circle, which is the conqueror king or the king of the home state. Kautilya mentions four main circles. Four mandalas are mentioned by Kautilya. So we look at the four mandalas or circle. The first circle is the circle in which the king is placed. The next important circle is the circle in which the enemy king is placed. He calls the enemy as Ari. A-R-I, Ari. So this is the second important circle. I will later explain the relationship between these circles. First, understand the four circles. First is the king. Second is the enemy of the king. Enemy of the conqueror king, who is called Ari. Now the third and fourth circles are quite interesting to note. There is a third circle or mandala which Kautilya calls Udasina. Udasina is a neutral king. Generally, the neutral king could be located far away. His state or the country could be located far away. The Udasina is a neutral king. He is neither friend of the conqueror king or the Vijigishu. He is neither an enemy. So he is neutral. He is neither enemy nor friend. Generally, he is located at a far off distance. The fourth circle is the Madhyama. Madhyama means intermediate. Madhya, middle, center, intermediate. The king who is seen in an intermediate position is called Madhyama. So the king will be ruling a state. State is a country. This country will be intermediate with respect to the conqueror king or Vijigishu. The intermediate king is generally an indifferent king. Indifferent means does not have any specific interest with respect to the conqueror king. We can give the examples of Nepal and Sri Lanka with respect to India's position. Nepal and Sri Lanka can be seen as Madhyama. Madhyama is nothing but buffer state. Sri Lanka is an example of a buffer state located near India. It is an intermediate state. It can be seen as Madhyama according to Kautilya's Mandala theory. Okay. Udasina is a neutral king. I will come back to Udasina and Madhyama again. Now let's focus on the king with respect to his enemy. Now coming back to the first two circles, enemy and king. Now the king is having a challenge, is it not? He wants to conquer, he wants to expand, he wants to ensure his survival and security. The survival and security of the king is the most important because he rules the state. He is like a father, he has to protect the state. So he has to safeguard it at any cost. So the king Vijigishu is having an enemy. Generally, the neighbor of the king is seen as enemy because the neighbor will be having competing interest. He will try to fight with the king for territorial ambitions. Now, how is the Vijigishu going to counter the enemy or the Ari? From India's perspective, the Indian state and the ruler can be considered Vijigishu. States like Pakistan and China can be considered Ari. Now, how to counter? The king counters by maintaining relations with the neighbor of the enemy or the Ari. The Ari in turn will have a neighbor. This state will be befriended by the conqueror king or the Vijigishu. Now this state neighboring the RE will become the friend of the Vijigishu. Kautilya calls this state as Mitra. Mitra means friend. Able to follow? Right? Actually, this is an assumption. It may not always reflect in reality. It is not a rigid model. So sometimes there may be some exceptions also. Kautilya does not tell that it is an absolute model. It is a relative model. It is a practical model. There may be some exception. So you have India, you have China. States like Russia can be considered Mitra. Right? So India, RE is China. Now who will become the Mitra? Russia will become the Mitra. Got it? If you take Pakistan, India, Pakistan will become the RE. Am I right? Who will become the Mitra? Iran is the Mitra. Iran. Today India and Iran are good friends. Pakistan has blocked India's passage to Afghanistan and Iran through its occupation of POK. Now Iran is helping India as a friend. It is providing access to India through the Arabian Sea. It is providing transit to Iran. So Pakistan and China can be considered RE with respect to Vijigishu, India. Russia and Iran can be considered as Mitra. Okay. Now the Mitra is not alone. The Mitra in turn may have an enemy. Mitra may have an enemy. Okay. Now this state is RE Mitra. Now this state is the friend of the enemy. Okay. The logic is you and I are friends. So your enemy is my enemy. RE Mitra is the enemy of the Mitra. Mitra is here. India's friend is here. RE Mitra is enemy of India's friend. The circle goes on and on, hypothetically. Who will come here? Here you will find the friend of the friend. Mitra, Mitra. Mitra, Mitra. For India, you have a friend, you have a friend. Okay, these two are friends. Which are the enemies? This is the enemy. Immediate circle, neighboring circle is enemy. Then you have another enemy. Got it? So odd number is enemy, even number is friend. This circle goes on and on and on, hypothetically. So I explained using India's example. There are other examples also. We can give many more examples. You take the Americas, America, North American continent. If you consider America, US as the king, conqueror king, US immediately has a RE or the enemy. For example, Cuba, located very near to US, was the enemy of US during the Cold War. Okay. But if you go further down south, US had its allies in South America. Colombia was a very strong ally of US. Now according to Mandala theory, US is the conqueror king or the Vijigishu, Cuba is the RE, and Colombia will become the Mitra for US. Able to understand? Once again, this is not an absolute model. There can be some exception. The general assumption is that greater the distance, lesser is the enmity. Okay. Apart from this, the immediate neighbor is considered enemy. The neighbor of the enemy is considered the friend. So Kautilya is applying principles of psychology to geography and foreign policy. He is taking into account psychology, mind, based on which he analyzes foreign policy with respect to geography. There are many factors which decides the foreign policy of a country. One such important factor is geography. Scholars like Kautilya give importance to geography. Apart from geography, is also taking psychology into account. There are many other theories that take geography into account, which we will study later. You have the Mackinder thesis, you have the Mahan thesis. Mahan thesis tells that the ocean or the sea provides an advantage. Whoever has access to the oceans will be the master. The Mackinder heartland thesis tells that whoever is located on a vast stretch of land will be the master. So there are many theories that takes geography as an important factor. Kautilya also takes into account geography as an important factor. Right? So to summarize, you have the Vijayikishu or the conqueror, you have the enemy or the Ri, you have the Mitra or the friend, and the circle goes on. Ari Mitra, Mitra Mitra. Examples: China, Pakistan can be considered Ari to India. Russia and Japan can be considered Mitra for India, because Japan is a neighbor of China, Russia is also the neighbor of China. I gave another example taking US as the conqueror king or the Vijayikishu. I hope you now have a good understanding about the Mandala theory. Now I will explain the concept of Udasina and Madhyama. As a student of political science, you should know about these two concepts. I will first explain Madhyama. In international relations, current affairs, you should have come across the term buffer state. What is buffer state? Buffer state is an intermediate state, something which is located in between two states. The concept of buffer state is important in international relations. The buffer state actually gets involved, or we can say it is caught in the power politics of two larger states or regions. So the best bet for the buffer state is to stay neutral. It simply stays indifferent. For example, Sri Lanka is a buffer state between India and China. Where is Sri Lanka? It is a tiny state. This is Sri Lanka, this is India, the massive state. You have China. So Sri Lanka can be considered a buffer between India and China. Another example of Madhyama or buffer state is Nepal, which is also located between India and China. So Madhyama is equivalent to the Western concept of buffer state. Intermediate, indifferent. It tries to work with the two powerful or the larger state. So the buffer state also benefits from this position. It is intermediate, it benefits. At the same time, it is influenced by the power politics of the two larger states. We can give many more examples of buffer states. Ukraine in Eastern Europe is a buffer state between Russia and the West. That is why it is caught in the war today between Russia and West. We call it the Ukraine war, but it is actually the West-Russia war. Ukraine in Eastern Europe is a buffer which is caught between the politics of two powerful states, Russia and West. Here West is the larger region, political interest, whose leader is US. So we can consider West as a state, Russia as a state. In between, the Madhyama or the buffer state is Ukraine. In fact, many states in Eastern Europe can be considered as buffer states or Madhyama. Belarus is another state. But currently the Belarus king, the ruler of Belarus, he is closer to Russia. So currently we cannot consider Belarus as a buffer state technically, but the region of Eastern Europe can be considered a larger buffer. The next concept is Udasina. Udasina is a neutral king. Neutral. Generally, the Udasina or the neutral king is located far away. Okay, he is neither an enemy nor a friend of the conqueror king or the Vijigishu. Similarly, he is neither friend nor a enemy of the Ari. The perspective from the Vijigishu's point of view is very important. So the Udasina is located far away. One important example of Udasina is US with respect to India. US located far away from India. US located far away. Under Mandala theory, US can be considered a neutral king. Currently, Indian state is an ally of US. Whenever Congress comes to power, India relationship with US will not be that stronger. But whenever BJP comes to power, the relationship with the US will be much stronger. But considering the relative position of the Vijigishu or the king, the neutral king is seen as far away and neutral. Now you can analyze the role of US as Udasina or neutral king with respect to South Asia. In South Asia, India is equivalent of the Vijigishu. Pakistan will be considered Ari. India doesn't consider Pakistan an enemy. The elite ruling class of Pakistan considers India as enemy. Anyway, going by Mandala theory, India is Vijigishu, Pakistan is Ari. Now US maintains a good relationship with India as well as Pakistan. Right from its creation in 1942-47, Pakistan was tilted towards West. The leader of the Western Bloc was US. At the same time, US also maintained a good friendship with India. So, US can be seen as a neutral king. But Kautilya tells that the conqueror king should maintain a good relation with the neutral king, because this will be helpful in times of crisis like war with the neighbor or the Ari, as well as the Ari of the Mitra. There is another associated concept called extended neighborhood. As a student of political science, you should associate Mandala theory with extended neighborhood. What is extended neighborhood? Extended neighborhood is a region or a state which does not directly share border with the state under question. That is the conqueror king or the Vijigishu. However, the state or the region is maintaining a friendly relation with the state in question. It also has common goals and interests with the state, and it works as an ally. This concept is called extended neighborhood. So what is the criteria? First is, it does not directly share physical border, but it is an ally of the state. It is having common goals and interest. It is maintaining a friendly relationship. From India's point of view, states such as Russia, Japan, Iran can be considered extended neighbors. They satisfy this criteria, not directly sharing border but located somewhat far away, but they share common goals and interests. They work in a friendly manner with the state of India. These are the states which can be considered as extended neighborhood. The regions that can be considered as extended neighborhood from India's perspective are West Asia, extended neighborhood; Central Asia, extended neighborhood; Southeast Asia, extended neighborhood; parts of Africa, external neighborhood, especially eastern part of Africa. Now certain policies can be applied by the Indian state to implement the concept of extended neighborhood. What are the policies? Can you tell me? Connect Central Asia is a foreign policy initiative through which India maintains good relationship with Central Asia. Now Central Asia can be compared to a Mitra. Am I right? So you should understand that the extended neighborhoods are nothing but Mitra. In between the Mitra there may be a Ari. There may be, there may not be, but this is the assumption. So China may be Ari, but over the Ari you have a Mitra in the form of Central Asia. West Asia is a Mitra. We maintain good relationship based on culture and economic ties. In between comes Pakistan, who can be considered Ari. Is it not? Southeast Asia can be considered Mitra. The policy applicable here is Act East policy. Act East policy is helpful for the Indian state to cultivate friendship with the Mitras in Southeast Asia and in turn check the Ari, which is the Chinese state. The Ari is already having some problems with India's Mitra. For example, South China Sea dispute. How to tackle the South China Sea dispute? The two Mitras, India and Southeast Asia, can work with each other. Okay? Japan can also be considered an extended neighborhood. Where is Japan? Japan is here, not bordering India, far away. It can be considered as a Mitra. Japan and India, two Mitras, are working as partners in the Indo-Pacific region. India and Pakistan both have Indian Pacific Ocean initiatives. India brought the initiative in the year 2019. Japan brought the initiative sometime before India. Both India and Japan have an initiative to develop the Indo-Pacific region. They want to make the Indo-Pacific region a free, open and prosperous region. Got it? Now, who is joining hands? The Udasina neutral king, US is also joining here. As a result, an alliance called Quad is formed. Got it? Udasina is coming here, along with two Mitras. Apart from this, the two Mitras, India and Japan, are working in African continent. The associated project is called AAGC, Asia Africa Growth Corridor. India and Japan are building infrastructure projects in Africa in order to influence the African region. The Ari, China, is a expansionist power. It is a hegemonistic power. We have to counter the hegemony. Apart from this, we have to compete with the Ari, China. So India and Japan are working with each other as friends in Indo-Pacific as well as Africa. The foreign policy initiative which is applicable to Mitra West Asia, that is external neighborhood of West Asia, is the Look West policy. Look West policy, West Asia, Quad Indo-Pacific, AAGC, India and Japan with respect to Africa, Act East policy with respect to Southeast Asia, and Connect Central Asia policy with respect to Central Asia. When it comes to Russia, India and USSR signed a strategic partnership way back in the year 1971. We signed a treaty called Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty. In fact, the strategic partnership was signed later in 2000, but you can trace the official signing of the strategic partnership way back in the year 1971. I hope you have understood the concept of Mandala Theory and its application to international relations in the present context. Thank you.